Please help me. Can you advise me in your comments? What should I do? I am helpless. Please hear my story. I got married 8 years ago. I was 28. He was 33. It was a December wedding. Cool breeze, fairy lights wrapped around trees, the scent of jasmine in the air. The kind of celebration people still talk about in WhatsApp family groups. The photographs looked picture perfect. 2 smiling families, a radiant bride, a confident groom, and I was hopeful, nervous, yes, but mostly at peace, because I thought I had found it, the person, the one they tell you you'll just know when you meet. He was calm, composed, the kind of man who spoke gently to elders, opened doors for women, paid for everyone's tea at a dhaba without a fuss. He held my hand in crowds, texted midday just to ask, had lunch, sent me old Hindi songs late at night, the romantic kind, the kind our parents slow danced to. He said all the right things, that he wanted a partner, not a puppet, that he respected ambition, opinions, dreams, that he valued honesty. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He was steady. And after years of mismatched setups, that steadiness felt like home. I remember sitting in the bridal makeup chair, looking at my reflection, and thinking, this is it. This is the start of everything good. I wasn't walking into a fairy tale. I knew that, but I believed I was walking into something strong-rooted. A life where I would be cared for, heard, understood. A man who would walk beside me, not ahead. Someone who would build a life with me, not for me or despite me. I chose him. With trust. With love. With all my heart. It started small. Almost imperceptibly small. You know how a thread begins to unravel from the hem of a well-worn sweater? Just a little loose fiber. Something you ignore. Something you tell yourself you'll fix later. That's how it began. We were driving one evening, a late dinner plan, I think. The roads were unusually crowded. The traffic light turned red. And stayed red. 3 minutes. 4. 5. And something in him snapped. At first, he clenched the steering wheel, knuckles whitening, jaw tightening. Then came the muttering. Then the cussing. Loud, angry words thrown at no one in particular. At the signal. The system. The world. I remember turning to look at him, confused. This was a small thing. Just a red light. I laughed softly, trying to lighten the mood. It's okay, we're not in a hurry, I said. I even touched his arm, gently, but he didn't respond. He wasn't with me in that moment. He was somewhere else, inside a storm I couldn't see, let alone understand. That moment stayed with me, not because it was loud, but because it was sudden. I'd never seen that side of him, and it shook something loose inside me. But I brushed it off. We all have bad days, right? So I let it go. But then, the bad days became a pattern. The Wi-Fi would slow down, and he'd pace like a caged animal. The power would cut for 5 minutes, and he'd throw a tantrum like a frustrated child. A neighbor would park wrong, and he'd yell from the balcony like he owned the street. It was as if the world owed him perfection, and when it didn't deliver, he punished the air with rage. It wasn't directed at me. Not yet. But I saw it. I felt it. This undercurrent of anger. Simmering. Constant. He wasn't who I thought he was. Or maybe he was. And I was only now beginning to see it. You can fall in love with someone's best parts, but it's how they behave on the worst days that tells you the real story. And my story was starting to change. At first, the anger was aimed outward. At the world. At traffic. At machines, systems, politicians, waiters, weather. It wasn't personal. Not directed at me. I told myself that. Often. He's just frustrated. He's had a long day. He's always been a little short-tempered. I said those things like prayers, trying to convince myself that they were truths, not excuses. But frustration, it needs a place to land. And slowly I became that place. It started with a sigh, a sarcastic remark when I forgot to switch off the bathroom light. Then the tone changed. The volume rose. One night, I served dinner 10 minutes late. He threw the spoon down and muttered something under his breath. I didn't catch all of it, but I caught enough. Something about how useless I'd become. How women like me ruin homes. I sat in silence, staring at the doll on my plate. It had gone cold. It escalated, fast and quietly, like water rising in a room until you suddenly realize you're drowning. Arguments didn't end with disagreement. They ended with humiliation. He'd bring up my family, twist their names into insults, mock my friends, sneer at the way I spoke English, call me lazy, selfish, stupid. He didn't shout every time. Sometimes it was a quiet cruelty, a sentence said without looking at me, a dismissal, a shrug, a sigh of disgust. And sometimes it was volcanic, rage that filled the room like smoke, words so foul I couldn't repeat them if I tried. I remember the first time he called me a name that made me flinch. It was over something absurd. I think I'd forgotten to buy coriander. And suddenly, I wasn't a woman anymore. I was an insult, a target, a punching bag made of skin and silence. And what did I do? Nothing. I shut down. I didn't scream back, didn't cry, didn't leave the room. I just went quiet, as if stillness could protect me. I thought if I didn't react, it would pass. If I stayed calm, he'd come back to his senses. If I absorbed it all, things would stay safe. Safe. That word again. But the truth? I was anything but safe. I wasn't bruised, no. But bruises aren't always purple and blue. Sometimes they're invisible. A tightness in the chest, a lump in the throat, a constant second-guessing of your own worth. And the apologies, they always came. Soft words, hugs, guilt. Sorry, baby. I didn't mean it. I was just tired. I'll work on my anger. I'll never say that again. And for a while I believed him, because when the storm passed, he was gentle again, funny again, the man I married again. But the thing about storms, they don't disappear. They circle back. And every apology came with a quiet price tag. My silence, my forgiveness, my willingness to pretend nothing happened. And I paid, over and over again, until I couldn't tell who I was anymore, the woman I used to be, or the woman surviving beside him. After every storm came calm, not always immediately, but eventually. He always apologized. And oh, how beautiful those apologies were. He'd sit beside me, head low, voice softer than the man who had screamed at me hours ago. Sometimes there were tears, actual tears, and they confused me. He'd say he hated the way he behaved, that he didn't know what came over him, that I didn't deserve it. He'd call himself names, beat his own chest emotionally. Sometimes he'd cook dinner, or take the day off work, or plan a small getaway, just us. There were flowers, books, even notes slipped into my drawer. I love you. You're my anchor. Don't give up on me. And I didn't, because I wanted that version of him to be real. The one who looked at me like I mattered. The one who kissed my forehead while I slept. The one who still remembered how I liked my tea. And when he was in a good mood, he was kind. He'd listen, hold me, laugh with me. He'd sing old Kishore Kumar songs in the car. He'd play silly games with my niece. He'd crack jokes that made me snort laugh. He could be so good. So incredibly good. And that's what made it so hard. Because the man I loved did exist. But he only showed up when the damage was already done. So I stayed. Not because I didn't know better, but because I remembered better. Because he made me believe that each apology was a turning point. That next time it would be different. That love could fix it. And maybe I was naive. Or maybe just loyal. Or maybe just human. But I kept forgiving. Kept resetting the clock. Kept erasing the bruises I couldn't show anyone. And every time I wiped the slate clean, he filled it again. With promises. With praise. With just enough tenderness to make me believe. But the apologies, they became part of the ritual. Like rain after fire. Not a solution. Just a pattern. And I realized something terrifying. He wasn't sorry because he hurt me. He was sorry because I noticed. Because I withdrew. Because I wasn't reacting the way he needed me to. His apologies weren't for me. They were for him. To keep the peace. To reset the balance. To make sure I stayed. And I did. For a long, long time. Because sometimes the illusion of love can be more powerful than the presence of harm. We lived in a joint family. My husband, his parents, and me, all under the same roof. The house was big enough, but somehow it always felt crowded. Not because of the space, but because of the energy. The air was thick, heavy with opinions, criticism, noise. Every evening, they'd gather in the living room. My husband, his mother, his father. And the conversations, they weren't conversations. They were complaints about people they knew, neighbors, cousins, friends. Have you seen her clothes? She's trying to trap someone. He's a good-for-nothing, just drives around in his father's car. She got promoted, must be sleeping with the boss. Every sentence laced with mockery. Every anecdote told to feel superior. Then came politics. The country. The system. The youth. The government. Nothing was ever good enough. No one was ever doing things the right way. I'd sit there sometimes, trying to fade into the walls, holding a cup of tea I didn't want, listening to the constant drone of negativity. They fed off it, like it gave them energy, like joy was some kind of threat. What struck me the most was how normal it all felt to them. Like this was how families bonded. Through judgment, through gossip, through shared disdain. I never heard them say, "That's kind of you. Maybe she's trying her best. Let's be grateful." Gratitude didn't live in that house. Compassion wasn't welcome. And the fights, God, the fights between my husband and his parents. Loud, explosive, ugly, screaming matches over the smallest things. Salt in the food, a missed phone call, who left the lights on, and the language. They spoke to each other like enemies on the street. Words I'd never heard used inside a home. Cursing, slurs, accusations, doors slammed, plates flung. The kind of chaos that makes a child cover their ears. Except these weren't children. These were adults, parents, partners, providers. And this was home. I remember once, during dinner, my husband shouted at his father, called him a failure. His father screamed back, called him an ungrateful bastard. And his mother? She kept eating, as if nothing unusual was happening. No one paused. No one de-escalated. This was just another Tuesday. And when I had arguments with my husband, I started seeing the pattern, the same foul language, the same lack of control, the same permission to be cruel. He'd say things about me that I can't repeat, about my body, my past, my family, my worth. And when I'd go quiet, which I always did, he'd later say, "I'm sorry. That's just how I was raised." As if being raised in chaos justified becoming the chaos. I began to understand something then. He didn't grow up learning how to love. He grew up learning how to win, how to dominate, how to hurt back harder. And in that house, the one who shouted the loudest was the one who won. And I was no match for that kind of noise. I didn't know how to scream, how to throw things, how to speak in venom. All I knew was silence. And in that house, silence didn't mean peace. It meant defeat. Then I became a mother. Our daughter was born 4 years ago. A tiny, wrinkled miracle. All pink skin and sleepy fists. She didn't cry right away. And in those seconds, that felt like hours. I remember holding my breath so tight, until I heard her voice. Her first cry. Sharp. Strong. Alive. I cried too, not just because she was here, but because I suddenly felt needed, in a way I'd never been before. There's something motherhood does. It stretches your heart so wide that you begin to notice everything, every sound, every emotion, every threat, not just around you, but within you. At first, she brought out the softest side of him. He was playful, attentive. He'd make silly noises to make her giggle. He'd hold her like she was made of glass. And watching that, for a moment I believed, maybe this child would save us. Maybe her presence would transform him, mellow him, make him gentler. But what I didn't understand then was that broken men don't change because of children. They perform around them, and then they snap, when no one's looking. Soon enough, the anger returned, not toward her, never directly, but it filled the room again. Short tempers, slamming doors, cussing under his breath when she spilled something, yelling when she cried too long. I'd watch her tiny face twist, not always in fear, but in confusion. Even as a toddler, she could feel the shift in energy, and that broke me in ways I can't explain. One day, I found her hiding under the dining table. There hadn't even been a fight, not a loud one, but he'd raised his voice about something, and she flinched, ran, curled up under the table and covered her ears. That image burned into my brain, because suddenly it wasn't just my pain, it was hers, too. And I realized I was no longer absorbing harm just to keep the peace. I was modeling it. I was teaching her, silently, that this is what love looks like. This is what women do. They survive. They stay quiet. They endure. I couldn't bear that. I couldn't raise another girl to believe that love means shrinking yourself just to fit someone else's anger. So I started watching more closely. Not him. Myself. What was I saying with my silences? With my apologies? with the way I carried myself around him. Every time I stayed, she was learning. Every time I forgave without consequence, she was learning, and I could no longer pretend that my endurance was noble. It wasn't. It was dangerous. She made me softer, yes, but she also made me braver, because when you hold something so small in your arms, you realize what it means to protect. And sometimes, protection begins with leaving the fire, not learning how to sit inside it. After years, it wasn't just anger or fear anymore. It was exhaustion, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion, the kind that sinks into your muscles, clogs your lungs, and weighs down your very soul. I didn't like him anymore, and that scared me more than anything, because liking someone, it's supposed to be easy, it's supposed to come naturally, but I found myself shrinking away, avoiding conversations, dreading his voice before he even spoke. Some days, I barely recognized the man I'd married, the man I thought I knew, the man I once loved. He was still there, in fragments, moments of kindness, fleeting smiles, rare laughter, but mostly, he was a shadow, a presence that drained me, that hollowed me out. I'd catch myself counting the hours, till he got home, till he went to sleep, till the day ended. I lived in the spaces between his moods, walking on eggshells, silent and small. And the worst part, I felt guilty about it, guilty for not loving him the way I once did, guilty for feeling tired of his anger, guilty for wishing, just once, for peace, because love isn't supposed to feel like this. It's not supposed to drain you, not supposed to break you, not supposed to make you forget who you are. I began to realize something else, too. I wasn't just tired of his anger. I was tired of being afraid. Afraid of what he might say. Afraid of how he'd react. Afraid of the silence that always followed the storms. That fear wasn't love. It was a cage. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted out. But I didn't know how. Because leaving wasn't just about me. There was a little life depending on me now. A little girl watching, learning. And I had to be brave. Not just for me, but for her. I was done pretending. I was done hoping. And I was ready to find a way. To breathe again. After years of silence, I finally found the courage to speak up. Not just to myself, but to him. I told him once when he was apologizing to me after one of his anger episodes that how his anger was hurting me, how I could take it no more, how I was becoming more detached from him emotionally, how it was poisoning our home, how it was scaring our daughter. I suggested something I hoped would help, an anger management session, professional help, because love isn't about fighting, it's about healing. But he refused. He said, "I'm not mental. I don't need a shrink." And his parents stood by him, defending him fiercely, calling me overdramatic, weak. That rejection hurt, not just because they denied the problem, but because it showed me how alone I really was and that there was no way out. Sometimes I wanted to raise my voice, and a flood of doubt would rush in. Am I overreacting? Am I being too harsh? Will this make things worse? I don't know how to handle this. I am breaking up. I don't want my parents or siblings or friends into this. It is not easy to ask for help. I worried about being seen as broken. I was afraid. Afraid everybody would judge me. Afraid of the pity in their eyes. Are you in a similar situation? How did you handle this? Please tell me what to do.